Welcome to another episode of Roll or Die. We love to have the Australian Elite Team guys on, and today we have another one for you. We are here today with the head coach at Elevate in Heidelberg, one of the affiliates of the Australian Elite Team, Daniel Kovacic. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome, man. Your hair's looking on point today, man. I gotta say, like last time I saw you, I don't think you had all that going on. It's classy.
Rekindle youth, you know what I mean?
That's awesome.
Young, the body doesn't feel young.
I like it, man. It's working for you, man.
Thank you very much, sir.
And what about, speaking of working for you, not working for you, I think last time I saw you also, you had some wrist thing going on. What?
Yeah, it's been the bane of my existence at the moment. So I had wrist surgery a year ago, full wrist reconstruction.
Right.
And as usual, surgeons don't understand what we do.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be all good in 3 months, and it's been a year now, and I'm still wearing a brace. It's a pain in the ass.
Right. Okay.
Was that from an accident, like an injury, or was it like repetitive, or?
Nah, so I don't know what it's from. I'm assuming it's from a car accident from 5 years ago, 6 years ago. 7 years ago, my airbags went off and I hit my hand. It's the only thing I can think of.
Right.
But I was getting pain in my wrist on a regular basis, and I was just obviously compensating by doing push-ups on my knuckles and just avoiding stuff like we do.
Yeah.
And it finally got to the point where I couldn't even surf anymore. I was getting pain just getting up on the board. So I went and got it scanned, and I had a completely ruptured ligament. And then I had an edema on one of my bones growing from the ligament not doing its job, and the bones rubbing against each other.
Oh.
So because it was at the level that it was at, they needed to cut a ligament out of here and replace it between the two bones here, and then drill some bone out of here and stick it in some bone over there. And
wow.
And then it's been crazy, and it hasn't been 100% yet. So it's pretty crap.
Thanks for sharing that, man, because it is important. Like it's an important part of the BJJ journey. You know what I mean? Like dealing with this adversity, it sucks, man.
Oh, I always tell everyone that, like, if you've got something that's hasn't been fixed in 3 to 6 weeks, go get it scanned. Like, don't leave it, because it ends up rearing its ugly head a couple of years down the track, and it'll be even worse than where it's at. So if I had got this looked at when it happened, it would have been a simple repair, and it would have been like no issue. Yeah.
Right.
But because I left it not knowing, it's become a reconstruction, and it's now a pain in the ass.
Thanks, man.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's interesting actually. That goes down it leads us down a path that we talked about a little bit, but not too much. And I know that we're all probably guilty of it. It's sort of just the nature of the beast with jiu-jitsu, is just training around injuries, isn't it? Like we all tend to do that. And so how is that pretty much what happened with you, Dan? Like you?
Yeah. And like I should know better, because I've had surgeries before. I've had my hip, I've had arthroscope my hip, and I've had an arthroscope on my shoulder. So, I should have known better. My shoulder, it was taking me ages. I was, doing the rehab approach and going to see, guy after guy. And it got to a point where I couldn't bench, I couldn't handstand push up, I couldn't handstand walk. And I just, avoided those things when I shouldn't have. This is a good news story. I ended up going to get a scan, seeing a surgeon, got it fixed, and now it's my best shoulder. So that's a really good news story. This is a not so good news story.
Yeah.
I say to all my guys at the club, like, you get an injury, sure, 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks is general. If you've torn a muscle, 4 to 6 weeks, you should get recovery and repair from that. But if you've got an issue and it's not fixing itself 6 weeks down the track, you may be seeing a physio, you've seen an osteo, it's still not fixed. Stop doing the same thing over and over again. Go get a scan.
Yeah.
Like, if you want longevity in jiu-jitsu, man, like you need to get on top of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
I agree. I think it's also a really good point, though, that like training around stuff is not necessarily dealing with it either. Like, because if you just change your game to deal with something, it sure, it can protect it for a while, but eventually something's going to happen, isn't it? And then you're going to be back in the pain, and it's not healing. It's not getting dealt with. So
Yeah, 100%.
It's a tricky one though. Yeah, because sorry to interrupt, Dan. I just feel like jiu-jitsu is so addictive, yeah. Like we don't want to miss out. And
Yes.
I mean, I don't know about everyone else, but you kind of get this FOMO.
Yeah.
I even get it still now that I think if I stop training for 3 weeks, everyone's going to catch up, you know, and then I'm going to come back in a month and all those people that I didn't have any trouble with, they're going to give me trouble.
Yes.
And I've got to so you really got to, I think, detach emotionally and put your ego aside a little bit for a moment and get the big picture because, it's not going to.
It's even worse when you run your own club or you're coaching because, you know, you're always here and people are like, why aren't you training? And you're trying to give it a rest and you think, oh, I'll jump back on and just go do this. Or, you know, the famous last words, just go light.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself in a vicious cycle when you should be doing the right thing and getting it fixed correctly. So, and I think, the big thing is, you know, there's hobbyists in jiu-jitsu who, you know, we all see them, they get their first injury and they're off and they don't come back. And then there's people that are here for the long haul and, you know, the injuries aren't going to stop us from doing what we love. And if anything, it's jiu-jitsu that made me rehab and be consistent with my rehabbing and get it all right so I can get back on the mats. I mean, that's been the thing for me from day one starting jiu-jitsu. So it's given me the drive to do what I got to do to get back to where I need to get back to. But at the same time, it can sort of be a bit of a negative spin as well because, you know, we sacrifice some of that rehab or some of that rest time for getting back on the mats and doing what we want to do. So it's a catch-22, you know?
Yeah. That's just a little bit of a change of topic here. It's just caught my eye, but just behind you over there's a little orange thing, and there's a very black phallic thing that I can see. What is that black thing just there in the corner of the screen? No, other side. Down, lower. Yeah, that thing.
That's a microphone that I'm not using.
One of your
Typical Anton to notice that.
That's my COVID microphone. I bought it in COVID, you know.
Oh, have you been podcasting?
No, I was doing some behind the scene technique videos and stuff that we're doing for our members, and
awesome.
You know, it's crazy. I mean, I look at it and you forget it even happened. It was crazy, but
yeah,
you know, we used it for a year or two and then haven't touched it since.
Yeah.
We started this podcast during the pandemic, but I guess we've kept going with it.
We haven't realized it's a waste of time.
That's come out of COVID, I guess.
And changing topics again, Dan, like you and your lovely wife Nicole are very involved in the kind of fitness side of things as well. Yeah, can you talk to us a bit about that? Like, she's full on, like with her. Is it CrossFit?
So when we started the gym, I mean, I've been training martial arts for years. I mean, I did Japanese jiu-jitsu for 10 years before I got into BJJ. I remember just as I was getting into jits, I had back issues like, you know, a lot of people in the world do. And I remember starting with Ninos, and that's when my back issues were starting to sort of come out into play. And this is after doing, 10 or 12 years of Japanese jiu-jitsu. Did 2 years with Ninos, and then we had kids, and my back got to the point where it was blowing out because I was up all night with my kids and bouncing off balls, like anyone with parents would know. It's just, dreadful. I had 2 boys that didn't sleep. They were waking up 2 times a night, every night. It was crazy. Right? I don't want to think about that stuff. But so I took some time off. I ended up having 5 years off. I tried to swim. I tried to do everything to rehab my back and try and fix it, thinking rest would fix it. Anyway, nothing fixed it. And then I started lifting. I started turning to the strength side of things, deadlifting, strengthening my posterior chain, so my glutes, hamstrings, etc. I was getting some treatment as well that was coinciding with the lifting. And it got to a point where my pain started to disappear, and I realized that, strength is the way forward rather than just, stretching and stretching and stretching, which was doing absolutely nothing. And then I got into CrossFit and started training CrossFit before I got back into jits. And, going through the whole Olympic lift cycle and the strength-based lifts and realized that it was having a positive impact on my body. And then it got me to the point where I could get back into training. So I started back at jits 5 years after, and this is a year into CrossFit. And that, light bulb went off in my head where I thought, many athletes or many, people that train jiu-jitsu, they don't, especially the young guys, they don't even consider doing any strength. And me being, 43 now, it's if I don't train strength, I can't do jiu-jitsu. It's as simple as that. It goes hand in hand. And I thought, let's open up a club where we can coach CrossFit and strength and conditioning and run jits hand in hand and try and have a philosophy that equalizes out to help people across the board. And then, obviously a shit ton of learning pursued over that. And my wife and I got heavily involved in strength and conditioning, and she went off on her sort of path and got into nutrition. So she's now a sports nutritionist. And I just went down the path of, strength and conditioning. So going to, understanding powerlifting and Olympic lifting and all that type of stuff. And yeah, it's just, we're at a point now where we're able to, help people that are in pain and get them back on a strength and conditioning path to enjoy the things they love. Because the last thing you want to do is, everyone's miserable when they're in pain. And I think back injuries are the worst because it's a whole body thing. Yeah. You can get around a wrist injury and you can still walk and swim and do these things, but the minute your back's sore, man, it puts the biggest damper on your life, and people get angry and depressed and all these crazy things. So, being able to help people work through that back pain, and it's just, a lot of the time, 70% of people I see in the gym that have back issues, the majority of the time it's a weakness. It's a weakness because their glutes are inactive. And, people say strengthen your glutes, but people don't know how to strengthen their glutes. It starts with basic activations and then building through from there. There's a lot of, people complain about hip flexors, this whole stretching movement. It drives me crazy. Like, I don't stretch. Ever since I met, I don't know if you guys know who Andrew Locke is.
Yeah, we've had him on the podcast.
Yeah, absolute machine, Andrew Locke.
It looks like he doesn't
I've done a lot of Andrew's courses. Spent a bit of time with him and Shant, one of his other guys, and I've learned a lot from these guys. And they've got a no stretch policy. And, it gets to a point where I just see guys that have got bad backs and they're stretching out their glutes and stretching out their hip flexors, and it's absolutely achieving nothing. So that's sorry to go off on a tangent.
No, that's what we're about. We're all about tangents.
So learning all this stuff, and obviously when you've got a vested interest in it because your own back's sore and you've got these issues yourself, you tend to take more care when it comes to learning, and you're eager to learn a lot more of these things. And then being able to apply some of this stuff to the guys at the gym and help some of these guys move forward is obviously very rewarding, and it helps these guys get back into jits, and it creates a better jiu-jitsu practitioner. So that's sort of where the gym sort of focus is. We run CrossFit classes, we do jits, and then in between we try and help anyone that's struggling from a pain point of view. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
And some people have got major issues that they're really hard to fix, and they go on to look at some other avenues. But as I said, majority of people can be helped just from working some basic activations. Again, those glutes right. Do you guys know who Shant is? He's one of Andrew Locke's guys. He's a strength rehabilitation guy. He's actually I see him now because Andrew's become
too busy.
He's crazy at the moment. He doesn't even do any one-on-ones. He's all around the world just lecturing and doing the stuff he's doing. So Shant's one of his sort of guys that he mentored, and he's come up through the chain, and he's super qualified. And I send a lot of my guys to him if I can't help them. And he's actually now starting jiu-jitsu because he gets a lot of guys coming to him that have got jits-related injuries, and he doesn't understand jiu-jitsu. So he started training with me so he can better understand the principles of jiu-jitsu, therefore he can better help rehab people so he can understand what we do and the mechanics of what we do. So that's really exciting because already, I think he's done about 3-4 weeks with me, but already some of the activation skill sets coming out of this from him now that are adapted to jiu-jitsu are crazy. So
awesome.
So we can get him on. He'd be a good guest. We might get him on the podcast.
Yeah, he'd be awesome. So watch this. I reckon in the next 4 to 6 months, he's gonna change the whole game. Like, we do so many unnecessary warm-ups in jiu-jitsu, right? And I don't want to aggravate anyone, but there's warm-ups for the sake of warm-ups, and then there's specific warm-ups that are good for our body to get us primed for what we're doing. And I think, a lot of the times in a lot of different classes across a lot of different coaches, they just do warm-ups for the sake of warm-ups, and they don't know why they're doing some of these warm-ups.
Yeah.
I think what Shant's going to be able to deliver in the next 6 months, i.e. tailored warm-ups to, what we're doing for jiu-jitsu, is going to be amazing. So, definitely look at maybe getting him on the future, and then, getting some feedback from him as to what we should be doing to prep our bodies to train better.
But with the strength training, Dan, it's really interesting what you say, because I fully advocate strength training as well. I guess it's hard though with jiu-jitsu, like I said, being so addictive. People sometimes think, oh, I don't want to give up like a jiu-jitsu session to do weights. You know what I mean? Like if I'm only got 5 days of the week I can train or whatever, I don't want to give up one of those jiu-jitsu sessions for weights. But what would you recommend as say someone trains a couple of times a week jiu-jitsu, how many times should they look at lifting?
So there was an interesting study done with FIFA, and not to bring soccer into it, but only because I've read the study and I can't remember the full details of it, right? But they looked at skill training in soccer versus strength and conditioning training, and they did 2 focus groups. Group A did 5 days a week skill set training, and then they measured their performance in game, and they did all these metrics in regards to ball time and all this crazy stuff, which I don't understand because I don't understand soccer, but it was an interesting study. And in the group B did 3 days a week skill training and 2 days a week strength training. And some of the metrics they're looking at was injury prevention, and then just general ball handling skills on the field, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. The gist of the study was the group that did the strength training, even though they were giving up 2 skill set trainings, performed better in the long run and had less injuries than the group that didn't do the strength training.
Yeah.
So that's a study that FIFA themselves conducted, and then they started implementing strength and conditioning coaches throughout, obviously, their protocols and helping their guys move forward. And if you look at any major sport team that are serious about their athletes, they all do off-season training, and then they all do, I guess, prehab or rehab, probably prehab, training in their protocols and strength training in their regimes to help their athletes move forward. So from a jiu-jitsu perspective, I know, you talk about the white collar worker that averages 2 jiu-jitsu sessions a week, and that's all they've got because they've got young families, etc. That's a real tough one. But if you've got someone that's training 5 days a week, there's no reason why these guys can't be doing 1 or 2 days of strength. Even if they'll split it to an upper body session, lower body session, 1 each a week, or even if they haven't got time, they'll do 1 full body session a week, which tends to be a little bit harder, but it's going to be so much more beneficial than doing no strength training at all.
What about if I'm training 6 days a week and I really don't want to give that up? I'm on a roll. I'm learning a lot. I'm not plateaued for the first time in a while. Things are expanding. But can I strength train on the same days that I do jiu-jitsu? Is that something I can do?
Are you training six jit sessions a week?
Yeah.
And your body's not falling apart?
Not at all. But I'm playing an old man game. I get my ass kicked a lot. I'm purposefully not, I'm not for harder. I'm showing up and I'm really focused on technique. I'm tapping often. I'm not willing to do or die in every role. I'm really out to expand my knowledge. So, for that reason, I'm still coming home wrecked, but I'm not.
Oh, so I will let's look at it this way. I will have, say, 1 day a week, I'll get some of my guys come in with me and we'll just go through an hour of tech. We might just play 50-50 for an hour, working our technique with leg locks. I don't really consider that a jiu-jitsu session. I know it is, but in my head, a jit session is for us a Thursday night roll where everyone's in and we're having 3-4 rounds after it. And you've got, everyone challenging you. And that for me is a big jit session. So I wouldn't train strength on that day.
Okay.
But say my Tuesday or a Friday, generally I'll catch up with one of my brown belts and we'll just have, an hour technique session. We'll roll, but it's not going to be anything crazy. And it's more situated on just going through some techniques and then some light rolls. That for me, I don't consider a jit session. That's just a session. And I'm more than happy to do either a Metcon, which is a CrossFit session, or train, a strength protocol session through that as well. Yeah, so cool. Not a problem. But if I go down to AET day classes, which I haven't been going to lately because of my wrists, but if I was to go down to one of that for me is a big jit session, and I don't try and do a double session on those days because it takes a toll on me. So
Yeah.
I try, it's taken me a long time to learn how to plan my days and work on recovery and rest so that I can continue to train throughout the week,
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. And Dan, you touched on it earlier, and we do ask it of all of our guests, like, how did you discover jiu-jitsu? You mentioned you'd done Japanese jiu-jitsu. What brought you to Brazilian jiu-jitsu?
So I was doing Japanese jiu-jitsu for a while, and part of Japanese jiu-jitsu, we had a thing called niwaza, which is, ground techniques. And I used to love it. We'd do niwaza where you'd start back to back, and then you weren't allowed to stand up back where we were training, and you had to grapple, and we would try and apply our stand-up techniques to the ground, and I loved it, but I felt like there was more to it. And then I discovered Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, obviously watching all the UFCs, and I remember watching, I don't know if it was UFC 4 or 5. Pat Miletich was one of the guys. He was a Japanese Jiu-Jitsu guy, so I used to root for him, but Hoist used to smash everyone anyway. So anyway, I saw Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and I wanted to try it. And my Japanese coach was just down the line, didn't want a bar of it, so I had to sort of sneak out and go and I think I did I went to Hangar 4 once when they were in Tullamarine because I was training out of Tullamarine. Went and did a session there, loved it. And then a year later, I went to a few comps just watching. And then a year later, I decided to bite the bullet and I went and did my first proper session I think I dropped into St. Kilda at Pete's, did my first proper session there. Absolutely loved it. And I thought, this is where I want to go. And then I was looking up places in Tullamarine and AET popped up, and I've known Ninos for a long time.
Yeah, he's a bastard, isn't he? No, he's got to be one of the nicest.
So when I saw Ninos was coach there, I'm like, there's not many Ninoses I know, man. So I walked in and it was Ninos, an old mate of mine, and I just started training there, and I thought I was good because I was just about to get my black belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and I'd done some niwaza sessions, and I absolutely got my ass handed to me by every single white belt in that joint. And I decided that's it. I'm a convert. I need to learn what these guys are doing because they're absolutely killing me.
Wow.
And that was my journey, man.
Awesome. And now,
did you?
Oh, sorry, go on, Ken.
I was just going to say, did you ever go back to Japanese jiu-jitsu, or did you ever
it was like, and not to take anything away from what it was. I think martial arts back in those days, and we're going back a while now. But I mean, we talk about it was very, this is martial arts were very closed off back in those. I think martial arts in general have just changed dramatically from where we were back then. Back 20 years ago, you went to an instructor and he really didn't have much contact outside of his own style, and he obviously protected his style, and his style was the best. And there was none of this thing about cross training and learning from other gyms. It just wasn't the thing. And I don't know, it wasn't all martial arts styles, but it was very much with my martial arts style. So you couldn't train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and go back and train there. And so there was a bit of negative vibes, and I thought, you know what, I want to give this 100%. So I just quit, and I went into it, and I felt I'd got as far as I'd gotten. I didn't want my black belt for the simple reason that I didn't feel confident enough to take on a boxer. So I'd done, 11 plus years of Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and we learned some amazing stuff. But if I had to fight a boxer, I was shit scared because you didn't have that. It was just different training, It's a lot of it, and it's funny because, I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is doing a bit of a 360 at the moment when you've got this self-defense style Jiu-Jitsu, Gracie self-defense and all this stuff. And I look at the stuff these guys are doing. They're just doing Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, yeah? Like that's what Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is.
Yeah.
Right now. And not to take away from anyone, but I think they're trying to rebrand it as, Gracie self-defense Jiu-Jitsu, whatever it is. I mean, we know it all came from Japan at the end of the day. So it is what it is. But I think what was lacking from my Japanese Jiu-Jitsu was those rolls. The 3-4 rounds of rolling at the end of every class.
It sounds like what was missing was pressure testing, proper pressure testing to see what works and what doesn't work. And these instructors are high on their own, Kool-Aid about their style, which is great. But, at the end of the day, competitions course pressure testing, and that's the thing.
100%. And that's why I say, like, I'll always choose a competitive blue belt over a non-competitive black belt any day, because it's just a different level.
Yeah.
And I remember 6 months into training with Ninos, I felt I could take on any boxer. Now, it was probably a little bit preemptive of me, but that's what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gave me. It gave me that notion of, man, I've just rolled for 6 months, 3 days a week, 4 rolls a night. I can take on anyone that doesn't know how to grapple. Like, and that's a stupid little white belt thing, right? Because 15 years down the track, you think, well, what was I thinking? But that's the difference it gave me. And I didn't want to get a black belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and feel scared to take on somebody. Like, I felt inadequate. So that's sort of that was another sort of pressure piece that led me to going into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wanting to be pressure tested, as you said, and get to the point where, as we know now, rolling with somebody that doesn't know Jiu-Jitsu, it's like rolling with a child. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like the difference in techniques, it's shocking.
It's amazing. I think
speaking.
I was going to say, I think it's time to segue into the competitions that you're starting to put on, because all of this you've accumulated in all of these years. It's now, now you're putting something else into the marketplace for people to pressure test. So can you tell us a bit about how you got the idea to put on a comp, and tell us about your comps in general. What's the plan? What are we doing?
All right, so I run Budo, obviously. I have been talking about running a comp to the guys that know me for like 5+ years. Every time we've gone to Japan to compete, every comp we've been to, it's always, whenever I got people around, it's like, we've got to do something. We've got to branch out and do something. And the reasons why I wanted to run my comp, because, at the end of the day, if you're going to bring something to the marketplace, why are you bringing what you're bringing to the marketplace? Is it going to offer a differential to what's already in the marketplace? And why would someone want to come to your comp over the comps that are currently out there? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of things that, I think the current comp scene in Melbourne is great. In Australia in general, I think is fine. But there's a couple of things that I think, I wanted to change and add that point of difference. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason, the drive behind why I want to offer a comp. The first thing, and we'll talk about the biggest thing, I think, is cash prizes, mm-hmm. right? I think comps are at a level now where I don't see the reason why we can't offer a cash prize. I know it's hard when you got all the divisions, and that's why we've restricted it to open adults only, right? And that just makes it easy for us, because you register for your weight division, you jump in, you medal, you get free access to the open. You win in the open, that's something to celebrate. I've entered a few opens in my time, and they are tough. Yeah, right? They are super tough. If you win an open weight division at your belt level, I think you deserve some cash.
I agree.
Yeah. And we would love to give more than what we're giving, but it's our first comp, and obviously we're just trying to be a little bit budget sort of, aware and trying to see where all this leads to. But the goal is I would love to be able to give out a $5,000 for a black belt open weight price. Like, that's where we want to get to. Wow. I want to give out $1,000 for a white belt open weight price. People bag white belts. I bag white belts a lot. It's fun.
Most dangerous people on the planet. Yep.
Now, the white belts are the things that keep the clubs going and keep the comps going.
Exactly. Majority of comps are made from white belts money, right? Yeah. So why aren't we giving these guys something back?
That's true.
So and that's where we sort of came up with the current tier, where it's what is it, $500 for white belts all the way up to $1,000 for black belts, right? Mm-hmm. I'm a master athlete. I would love to give money to masters athletes, but it gets really hard because you've got so many different master divisions.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to work something out so that there is some form of prize for the masters from next year onwards. But, this year we're like, right, let's just start it. Let's just give the cash prizes to the adults for now, and then let's work out what's happening moving forward for year 2, 3, 4, etc. So that's the first thing, cash prizes. All right. If you're making money off comps, I think you should be giving some cash prizes out. End of story. Like, I don't care how big the medal is. I don't care if you give away a $9 t-shirt. Like, give out some money, right? It
Money
doesn't. I mean, what's it costing us? $7,000 for this, whatever it is. Obviously, we've got male, female, and I'm not going to get into that as well because there was some stuff
Oh yeah.
We need another
I
whole
don't want to get into that. There was some crazy shit going on the internet. You know, in my mind, male, if anything, females should be paid more. Okay, I've said it. I don't care how many females are competing. They should be paid more. They have to. You think about it. On average, what? There's 5, 6 females at an average club. I'm not talking about your big clubs like Absolute and that. But what? 5, 6 females at an average club if you're lucky. These chicks get smashed day in, day out. And they come in and they
should be compensated for that.
Amen, brother. You're preaching to the converted here. Yeah.
Between us, when I watch these girls compete at comps, they are way more exciting than guys.
We've now got a title for this podcast. It's chicks should be paid more than dudes in BJJ.
100%.
Yes. Forest last weekend was awesome. I don't know if anybody watched that.
Oh yeah, I love watching.
It's fantastic. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, so I would like, and I've actually been working. I've got a guy that's working with me. We're working on, trying to get the sponsors on board. And it's very hard when you haven't started a comp because you've got no data to show. But, moving forward next year, I actually want to get a female sponsor on board to double the female prizes. Like, that's all I want from that sponsorship. I want them to be a female-centric brand. I want it to come along and say, if we're doing $1,000 for females, I want them to butt up $1,000. So females... I would love to run a comp next year where females are getting double the price of males. I would love it.
Amen, brother. Let's do that.
And the thing is too, like Australian jiu-jitsu at the moment, the females are killing it. If you look at the world stage, Nora, Adele,
absolutely,
they're killing it. So it'd be really good. And so, Dan, tell us, when is this comp? Where is it? How do people register?
So it's the first one, and this is the second thing. So I'm running 2 comps because the second thing, and the other reason why I want to run a comp is I hate when they stack gi and no gi on the same weekend, right? You get all these guys that do gi, and then you got a bunch of guys that don't do gi, and they come in on Sunday nice and fresh, and then the guys that do gi, they will register for weight and they'll register for open weight, and most people will do it because if I go shit in my weight, I can go and do open weight and try that. How many times have I seen people medal in their weight, get a gold? Nah, I'm not going to do open weight because I want to save myself for no gi tomorrow. And then you got these fresh guys coming in on Sunday, and that's fine. If you don't want to do gi, that's fine. You can't blame these guys. They're no gi guys. And they come in and they try and tear it up and they're all fresh. Yeah. I feel gi and no gi are 2 different entities.
Yeah.
I feel if you're registered for gi, you need to train for gi. I feel if you're registered for no gi, you need to train for no gi. So we've set our comps up, one in May, one in September. One's gi, one's no gi. So 7th of May is gi. 3rd of September, which is 4 weeks before the Pan Packs, is no gi. Awesome. And that's going to give each style its representation. And it's going to make it a level playing field for anyone competing in that comp.
Love it, man. That's so cool.
So that's dates, and that's the second thing. Third thing we're doing, and the reason why I wanted to run this comp as well, is because I hate how black belt comps. So you're at a comp, and you're there with your team, your crew, whether you're a coach, whatever. You're coaching your guys, and then off in the corner, some super cool black belts are fighting it out. And you can't go watch them because you've got your white belt that you're coaching. And, it is what it is. I feel black belts, I want to run, and obviously this first comp's going to be an interesting one for us because we're going to try it. But I want to run the black belt matches throughout the day for the weights. Those open weight black belt matches, they are run at the end of the day when nothing else is getting run. I feel if you're a black belt, you have done your time. If you're competing in an open weight for cash, I don't want anyone else shouting at another colored belt. I want everyone focused on these guys competing. And that's the other thing we're doing. We're doing the black belt open weight starting at, I don't know, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, when everything's ended. And hopefully in time, as these comps build, I want to make that black belt open weight a live streamed event on a Saturday night.
Yeah,
So the
no.
open comp starts at 9. We get the kids out of the way by 11. Everyone jumps on, and then by 4 o'clock, everyone's done. Half an hour to prep, whatever. Live stream goes in, go away, get some food, come back, watch these guys battle it out, and it's an event for night as well.
Yeah. Anton and I can commentate. We can put our hands up for that. We'll have sorry, Anton, just put our hands up for that.
No,
Didn't get to talk to you about it first. That's the way I roll.
We love that.
We're nearly out of time.
That's the third drive for doing what we're doing with the comp.
That's awesome.
We've got 1 minute, 20 seconds. Do you have any other final words, any parting thoughts? Finish it off?
No, just, we just, obviously the first one's going to be the first comp. So, for us, we're a bit nervous, but, register, jump in there, take out the open weight, get some money, help us build something that's going to obviously deliver back to you guys so that we can put on the best comps possible moving forward.
Awesome, man. Awesome. What a star. It's been a great show. Thanks so much for coming on, man, and sharing.
Thanks, guys.
You're awesome. Great.
Really Thank you so much. And just one last quick point. Dan was the Budo gi was one of my first gis. I went and bought it from Dan. So hit him up for any gis that you need as well. We're not sponsored, but
everyone's got a Budo gi. Just it feels like everybody's got one.
They are.
Awesome. I love it.
Peace out, everybody. Catch you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.